The 21st century, religion so openly disunited people and set them against one another that the hierarchical leaders are constantly forced to talk about ecumenism and unity. The majority of society is so engaged with scientific discoveries and new technologies that the state is forced by laws to protect the rights of believers. So this raises the question, is there a place for faith and church in the 21st century? Do people have the right to have a national church through globalized peace? We will discuss this issue and many others in the concluding chapters of the series on the history of the Ukrainian Church. The Soviet government didn't allow Metropolitan Mstislav Skripnik to visit the first council of the Ukrainian autocephalous Orthodox Church, which took place in Lviv in 1989. At that time, the Metropolitan was a US citizen. It was only thanks to the support of the Speaker of the Parliament at the time, Leonid Kravchuk, that visa support was provided to allow Metropolitan Mstislav entry to Ukraine. His first trip to Soviet Ukraine was in autumn of 1990. Then deputies of the parliament Vasil Chervony and Mykola Parovsky organized the trip around Ukraine especially for Metropolitan Mstislav. Your Holiness, you visited many cities in Ukraine, including Chernihiv. Do you remember how the situation went down? At that time, Moscow was preparing a provocation and suddenly a throng of people attacked us. We hardly managed to fend them off. They tore my clothing to shreds. They tried to break through to the Metropolitan, but the police just washed their hands off. But we did everything right to protect him, and he eventually made his way into the city council.
Все правильно зробили, він зайшов в міськраду, потім ще ми підсилилися, якось відтіснили їх.
Ukrainian patriots responded to the provocations of Moscow with extreme disregard of the episcopate of the Russian Orthodox Church. For example, on October 26, 1990, the Patriarch Alexei II paid an official visit to Kiev with a positive mission. He presented the Kiev Metropolitan Philaret Tomos the credentials in the form of a found charter for the restoration of an administratively independent Ukrainian Orthodox Church. But on the surface, this was not important. The exarch of the Russian Church was perceived with hostility, regardless of what his aims were.
Коли патріарх Московський прибув сюди в Україну, були масові демонстрації з моєю участю.
Mass demonstrations were held in downtown Kiev when the Patriarch of Moscow came on an official visit to Ukraine. We protested this visit because we felt it was interference in the internal affairs of Ukraine. When we received information that Patriarch Alexei II was going on a lunch break at the Kiev hotel, a throng of enraged protesters marched alongside his entourage, clamorously shouting out the slogan, "May you choke on a bone in your throat."
Якраз до нас дійшла така інформація, що він збирався там обідати.
However, Kiev Metropolitan Philaret Denisenko, as the acting patriarch after the death of Patriarch Pimen, managed to transform the Ukrainian branch of the Russian Orthodox Church into the legitimate Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Thanks to his lobbying, the Moscow Council granted the UOC a founding charter of independent governance. What did that mean? It meant that the head of the church was granted the right to convene the local council and make any decisions about the future of this church. It was exactly this right that Metropolitan Philaret exercised. In early November 1991, he convened the local council. At that time, Ukraine had proclaimed independence, which meant that the canonical law, one state, one church, was already in effect. For this reason, the council decided to demand the Russian Patriarch granting the Ukrainian church the status of autocephaly, so that it would function independently from the Moscow Church.
І ми прийняли таке рішення, підписали всі всі єпископи, представники всіх монастирів.
We approved such a decision, which all representatives signed: bishops, members of monasteries, priests, and educational institutions. We have documents that confirm my words. After that, we sent a request to the Patriarch of Moscow and the Episcopate of the Russian Church to come to an agreement on the autocephaly of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Щоб вони погодились на автокефалію Української церкви. І як почали далі розгортатись події.
The Moscow Patriarchy ended up in an extremely difficult situation. There were no other canonical or other reasons to reject the request of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church for granting it the status of autocephaly. All decisions of Kiev were totally legitimate, seeing as the head of the church was empowered by ecclesiastical and administrative autonomy. He convened the local council. And this council made a decision that autocephaly was absolutely legitimate. Nobody was expecting such a decision in Moscow. If to recall, Metropolitan Filaret was one of the contenders for the rank of the Patriarch of Moscow.
Предстоятель Української православної церкви,
Head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Blessed Bishop Filaret, conducted the policy of acquiring the rights of self-governance of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, right down to absolute disconnection, in order to remain only with a prayerful union with the Moscow Patriarch. Metropolitan Filaret did his best and deserved to be thanked for what he achieved, namely he managed to convince Tomos. Metropolitan Filaret Denisenko is often accused of his opposition to founding of the Ukrainian Autocephalous Church in the beginning. But let us recall that we are talking about the period when the Ukrainian Church had not been granted the rights of self-governance. Therefore, Filaret, being an important hierarch of the Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, had to adhere to the general line of this church. His efforts to gain church independence became a reality only when all of the bishops of the Ukrainian Metropolitanate voted for autocephaly of the Ukrainian Church during the local council.
Із цим рішенням собору про повну автокефалію Української православної
However,
церкви.
while traveling to Moscow, only two of the bishops put their signatures of faith to the decision of the council. It was Bishop Yakov and another one.
Поставленому під рішенням собору про автокефалію. Це владика Яків і ще один єпископ. А всі інші...
As a reminder, while the Ukrainian Orthodox Church had total independence in terms of its governance, those bishops said that they signed the document on the decision of the Kiev Council under pressure. In other words, they were declaring a totally different position on this issue.
Був під тиском, вони заявляють зараз про іншу позицію і тому подібне.
In fact, those bishops betrayed the canonical church, betrayed their high priest, and said that they would subordinate to Moscow Patriarchate. In this situation, the Moscow Bishop Council of the Russian Orthodox Church demanded that the Filaret renounce the rank of a priest of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Патріарх Олексій всіляко противився скликанню цього
Patriarch Alexei tried every which way to resist the convocation of the Bishops' Council of the Moscow Patriarchate so that it would not consider the issue of autocephaly of the Ukrainian Church. But upon my insistence, with the support of the Episcopate, we wrote a letter to the Patriarch and a decision was made to hold the Archbishop's Council. But the Patriarchate decided to consider my request instead of the issue of autocephaly in Ukraine. They wanted me to abandon the Kiev Council and voluntarily step down as a head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
А розглядати моє питання. Яке питання? Щоб я покинув Київську кафедру. Щоб я добровільно відмовився від предстоятельства в Українській православній церкві.
The allegations were so ridiculous and ungrounded that Metropolitan Filaret was elected in the end. The members of the council expressed their gratitude to him for his conscientious service to the church. In the end, the members of the council did not consider Ukraine's autocephaly. However, representatives of the Russian Orthodox Church realized that Metropolitan Filaret was a key figure in this situation. So special security services and the media began a huge mudslinging campaign against the Metropolitan in newspapers and on TV.
Ми знаємо, що така практика і зараз активно використовується.
We know there is a practice that is actively used in Russia today, when some priests provide certain compromising insider information to Russian special forces. Moreover, a number of priests are in fact officers of the Federal Security Service of Russia. Precisely from the archives of the KGB, various falsified papers and documents appeared that had the aim to pour dirt on the good name of the bishop of the Ukrainian Church. For example, even the opposition press in Russia began printing a huge article under the headline, "He's blessed without a mitre and a wand." The paradox of the situation was that a year before these events, Filaret served as the acting patriarch of the Russian Church. How could he become the first figure in the church if all that was said was the truth? Unfortunately, this unpleasant situation had a truly detrimental effect on his health, and he became ill. Despite his unexpected illness, he did not reject the decisions regarding autocephaly. Bishop Filaret didn't take the middle of the road. He fervently defended the decision of the Kiev Council that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, in accordance with the charter of the Moscow Patriarchate, is self-governing and proclaimed the status of autocephaly. In other words, it became an independent church as the Orthodox Church in Romania or Georgia. Therefore, the church should be independent, seeing as Ukraine proclaimed the independence of its state. This corresponds in full to the canons of the ecumenical patriarchate.
Абсолютно відповідає всім канонам православ'я. Є незалежна держава, повинна бути у ній незалежна церква.
Activists of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church understood that Moscow would not forgive Filaret, so Moscow authorities began seeking an opportunity beyond the limits of the canons to displace the head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Therefore, an initiative was taken to unify the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Autocephalous Church. This had to be done immediately, as long as both churches had indisputable canonicity. Mykola Porovsky acted as a facilitator for two of the highest hierarchs of the Orthodox churches. He first persuaded Metropolitan Filaret, and then he met with Metropolitan of Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church, Volodymyr Romanyuk, to try and persuade him to agree.
Я приїхав до нього і кажу: Владико Володимир, унікальний історичний момент.
I told Volodymyr that it was a unique historical moment to unite the Orthodox Church and the Autocephalous Orthodox Church into a single local Orthodox Church in Ukraine. I recently met with Metropolitan Filaret, and he agreed with my proposal. Filaret Volodymyr Romanyuk gazed at me for several minutes and pondered and said, "This is not possible because the head of the church, Metropolitan Mstislav, was in the US at that time." This was indeed a very long process, and all aspects had to be agreed to.
Що митрополит Мстислав, предстоятель церкви в Сполучених Штатах, в Банбруці, це дуже довгий процес, треба узгоджувати його і тому подібне.
Finally, Volodymyr agreed to the union. Later, he met with Metropolitan Filaret. The hierarchs of the churches had reached an agreement recognizing the priests and bishops and did insist on reconsecration of the clergy. A few weeks later, the Council of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Autocephalous Orthodox Church was held in the Volodymyr Cathedral in Kiev. Its mission was the founding of a single Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Kiev Patriarchate, and the Patriarch Mstislav Skripnik was elected as the presiding priest.
Він за кілька тижнів
A few weeks later, he came to Ukraine and did not understand all those processes. Being a resident of the US, he advocated holding lengthy debates for agreeing to those decisions. In short, he made a speech about the great democratic procedure.
Ту, яка є в Сполучених Штатах, що це повинна бути тривала дискусія, обговорення, тривалий процес, погодження і тому подібне, тобто велика демократична процедура. Тоді день був
And then every day was on the account, because they could be delayed for several days before the Kharkiv Council would be held. While it was rather difficult to explain to Patriarch Mstislav the reason for the haste of holding the convocation of the council, he understood everything and blessed the union.
Дискусії пояснювати предстоятелю, уже патріарху Мстиславу, чому так поспішно був скликаний собор, і він відбувся без його особистої участі. Але нам вдалося це йому пояснити. Об'єднання він сприйняв, благословив.
Meanwhile, the leadership of the right-wing radical organization Ukrainian People's Self-Defense had difficult negotiations with the church hierarchy. Patriots persuaded them to support and bless the forced squeezing out of Russian Orthodox communities out from such holy places as the Kiev-Pechersk Lavra and the Pochayev Lavra. In order to demonstrate to the clergy that this would be easy enough to do, in 1992, representatives of a radical organization seized and held under control several administrative buildings of the Kiev-Pechersk Lavra. However, the state authority was categorically against such actions. Therefore, the hierarchs of the Church of the Kiev Patriarchate did not dare support this initiative of the young patriots. As a consequence, the Pochayev and Kiev-Pechersk Lavra are today the most conservative centers of influence of Russian rule in Ukraine.
Ми якраз взяли під охорону Володимирський собор, взяли інші.
We took the Volodymyr Cathedral as security and other large residences that were conveyed to the Kiev Patriarchate in a number of regions of Ukraine. The force factor of our organization was already known to everyone at that time. Together with the church, we basically created two hands from one body. The priests were the spiritual leaders and we were their fists. And it was good that we had them. That is why we used the slogan, "Die by the cross, die by the sword." We were that sword and the church was the cross. Fighters of the Ukrainian People's Self-Defense had the opportunity to explore the offices and cells of the Lavra Orthodox clergy of the Russian Patriarchate, and their suspicions of the anti-state positions of certain hierarchs of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate were confirmed in the most astonishing way. The security service of Ukraine should work if its officers are truly representatives of that service. They had to check the documents of all the monks who lived in the monastery and what was stored in the cellars. At that time, we found then a lot of video cassettes with pornographic films, found different objects for sexual games, and a lot of Russian imperial literature with double-headed eagles and signs that there is no such country as Ukraine, and there is only the Great Russia.
Двоголовими орлами і з якимось там фактором, що ніякої України немає, є велика Росія.
І відповідь шовіністичної російської церкви не заставила на себе чекати.
And the reply of the chauvinistic Russian Orthodox Church came almost immediately.
Православної церкви Київського патріархату був проведений неканонічний архієрейський собор Московського патріархату.
In contrast to canonical local council of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Kiev Patriarchate, the non-canonic Archbishop's Council of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate was held, where one of the Russian bishops was elected Metropolitan of Kiev, thus giving impetus to the schism in Ukrainian Orthodoxy.